Greetings, everyone. And like always, it's always a pleasure to have the opportunity, actually the blessing, to be in your presence and to share a few moments with you for our elevation, and our purification. And it's interesting to think about language that way. But that's what it does. It elevates us and it purifies us. Well, of course, it can go the other way. And
Indeed.
if it's misused, then it can deteriorate you instead of
Mm,
elevating you. It
mm.
it can
Nice
take you down.
contrast you just made.
Yeah, it can
Yeah.
take you down to the lowest of the low. I mean, we can see that in most scripture. You can see that picture being painted. So it's good to be here. It's good to be here and good to have you with us. And we appreciate you. We thank you for your time, and we think that you will benefit a lot from this discussion today on the letter. And the letter is a interesting letter. It's something that we don't give much attention to, unfortunately. It's the letter Daad. And if there's a proper English transliteration, if we could look at the letters in English that would represent that sound, it would be D-A-A-D, Dodd. And we'll look at that much further. Our international instructor, Benjamin Bilal, will serve in that capacity to let us know what's all in that letter in a way like none other can. And without going further in this introduction, I'll take this talking stick and gladly pass it over to my good friend and associate and compadre, and I can say so many
Yeah.
good things about my about the
Yeah.
international instructor, but I'll let his work speak for itself. So.
That's what I'd rather it do. I think it was Jesus in the Bible said, I of myself can do nothing, It's just the Father, that guy. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right, right.
But thank you. Thank you. Um, I appreciate that level of respect and honor that you give in your introductions. And that's important, for people who do serious work to make sure that the honor is given to that person. It's not a good thing for a person to hoist or foist honor upon themselves.
Mm,
That's when, people have a problem in the ego department.
yes.
But when you have a situation where people in the public are giving you accommodations for things that they felt were valuable that you were able to do for them or for other people, then that's perfectly acceptable. And I would say that's acceptable, I'm guessing, in anybody's religion. It doesn't matter what religion or not religion that you're participating in. But I think it's clocked into the nature of the human being to be appreciative.
Mhm.
You know, that's
Yes.
probably the first law that's governing not only the cosmic, areas of life, but
Hmm.
this terrestrial
Hmm.
area of life. I think everybody appreciates the, I don't want to call it praise.
Mm.
I'll leave it with the word I used, appreciation.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, appreciation. And it's interesting that in the Arabic word alhamd, which is the beginning of the Quran, actually, we say alhamdulillah. It's saying that the recognition and the appreciation that is due to God is due to God
Mm.
for all that we say the creator, the source creator has done. And it's innumerable. We can't begin naming the things that just in our own little personal life, our creator has done for us that we really pay very little, if any, attention to on a daily basis, like breathing.
Mm.
It's so imperceptible. It's so quiet. It's so unassuming to just breathe in and out. You'll never be able to tell me how many times you did it in a day's worth of time. How many times did we breathe in and out in the last 2 hours? We have no idea. Maybe in the last 2 minutes we can't tell you how many times we sat here and did other things while breathing. But if we cut that breath off for longer
Hmm.
than 2 to 3 minutes, we out of here.
Right.
So that's how ultimately merciful the source creator is. But let's get into this letter. This is a very interesting one. In Arabic, there are letters that are called that I like to call siblings. They're
Mm-hmm.
siblings, meaning that they're so close to each other that they even sound alike. So last time we were together, we discussed a letter called the Sod. And if you remember, Sod has to do with the torso.
Right.
And the word sudur in Arabic means the chest or the
Mm-hmm.
torso.
Mm-hmm.
And what's important about that is that there are very important um, tools that the human being needs to live. All of those tools are in the torso. We call them organs,
Hmm.
but they're in the torso area. Whereas if you removed even one of them, the body is going to have significant problems, or you won't be able to live at all with some of them removed. The heart, for instance, of course.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We can remove a part of the spleen and we can take out a kidney, and other things we can do and get away with. But the heart, no, you have to have that. The lungs, you can have a collapsed lung and they can begin working on you with that. But if both of the lungs go, you're out of here. So that's the sudur. That's the
Mm-hmm.
sod. This letter, however, is dod.
Hmm.
And it even looks like the letter sod,
Hmm.
except that it has a dot on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
We call it dod. And Daad represents the opposite effect.
Hmm.
It represents the idea of strength, just like Sod represents the strength of the torso. But in this case, it's whatever interrupts that strength.
Wow.
Isn't that wonderful? Yeah.
Yeah.
Daad is whatever interrupts that strength, especially if that interruption occurs in the torso.
Hmm.
Daad implies weakness. Sod implies strength,
Mm-hmm.
but Daad implies weakness. And it represents weakness that occurs after a thing had been strong or had become strong. So it could represent old age. It could represent if you've been in an accident and before that you were running marathons and now you're in a wheelchair. That level of dissipation in the area of strength is what the letter Daad implies. And it signifies a level of fragmentation also. See, Daad signifies when a thing that was once whole begins to disintegrate.
Hmm.
Now, that covers the ground of everything from your mind
Hmm.
to even into up to your community life. We look at YouTube and we go back and look at what Harlem was like in, what did they call that? The Harlem Renaissance,
Right. Right.
right? Several decades ago, the Harlem Renaissance.
Hmm.
Well, that also means that at one point Harlem had dissipated.
Hmm.
Renaissance means to be reborn. Then Harlem fell again.
Hmm.
And now there's a serious resurgence of interest in what Harlem is. But the difference is that the hands have changed.
Mm-hmm.
Other groups of people came in and they started buying up the real estate. At one point, the African American community or certain individuals like Percy Sutton, if you know him, they owned the Apollo. But some other people came in after he had gotten old and they purchased the Apollo. So the place that we used to go to for all of the African American entertainment eventually came under the leadership, the political and economic leadership of a different group of people who were not invested, so to speak, in Harlem to the point where they were living there. They weren't living in Harlem, but they began to own Harlem, So that shows you the difference between something that is built up over time and something that begins to disintegrate.
Hmm.
And eventually, a thing that disintegrates will disappear, fragment by fragment. So Daad is the fragmentation of that which was considered whole at one point. And yeah, I mean, everybody has seen a dilapidated house. Everyone has probably seen by now a building that had to be, what's the word for it? When they have to tear it down, they have a word for it. I know. They might consider it to be structurally unsound, and they implode it. That's what they do. They implode. They put bombs, dynamite in certain parts of the building, and then they implode the building so that it comes down on what they call its own footprint.
Mm.
So that's the level of dissipation of a structure that was once united that has now become disunited and fragmented and therefore weak. So we're saying these things because these concepts that are given to us in these Arabic letters are concepts that apply also to the building up and tearing down of human life. And that is more important than the building up and coming down of a physical building.
Yes.
The physical building can't make decisions on its own about important issues of life. But the human being, when he and she begin to become fragmented mentally and emotionally, we call it falling apart when people do it emotionally. I had a nervous breakdown, you see. So it's in our language, but we haven't been able to apply the letter logic so that we can understand what's being said better.
Wow.
But the letter is Daad. And give you a good, for instance, there's a word in the Quran. It's actually the last word in the first surah called Al-Fatiha. And the last,
Darling.
yes, that's right, at Daleen.
Wow.
See? And it means to stray. So what it is saying is that when a thing that was together, if your family's together, and then members, children get away from you or they begin to stray, it causes a level of dilapidation, a level of weakness in the family. Where's my child? That happened to me actually. One of my sons was 5 years old, and we went out to the whatever it was, CVS or some store like that, and we were in the aisles, and we used to always tell our children stay together. There were four of them at that time. And we just said, stay together, everybody stay. I mean, literally, we used to have them holding hands all of the time they were in the public.
Mm.
So if one stepped into the street, we knew all of them were in the street, that kind of thing. If one of them went into an aisle, we knew all of them were in that aisle. But for some reason, the curious one, Uswa, he got away from us, man. And we couldn't find him anywhere in the store.
Wow.
So that became an issue, and it became a weakness on our part, not keeping up with him. He's 5 years old. And it eventually turned out, this is just a little aside, turned out he had left the store.
Wow.
He wasn't anywhere in the store. And long story short, he ended up home.
Oh,
5 years old. We were about 10 blocks from home. And he ended up home.
wow.
Somebody called us and said, you got a boy named Uswa? I said, yeah. He knew the phone number. We made all of them memorize their phone numbers.
Okay.
And we said, well, how did he get to where you are? He said, I saw him walking the street. And I asked him, who did he belong to? What are you doing? And he said, well, I was in a store, but I don't remember what store. He gave his
Wow.
whole 5-year-old knucklehead story. You
5 years old. Wow.
know.
Wow.
But he was safe. See, Allah, he protects you when you
Yeah.
when you're trying to be right. You know,
No,
he was
th- th-
he was home. Hmm.
this letter was so personal for me as well, brings back so many memories and experiences and on so many different levels.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that when I first started, studying this letter and Daud,
Hmm.
but man,
Hmm.
just last night, as a matter of fact, had an opportunity at last minute. One of my daughters called and said, we're going to put some meat on the grill. Why don't y'all come over? So we did. And,
Hmm.
and so it gave me an opportunity to study one of my webcams, the new camera I was telling you about.
Right.
Yeah, it gave me a chance to study that, so I really learned how to work it while I was there spending time with the family.
Hmm.
And so, as it turned out, a couple of my daughters and my wife and granddaughter, they were playing a game at the end of the night. So I was in another room, but I was still in and out.
Hmm.
But I'm listening and I'm thinking about them. Now what has happened in the African American experience is that the family structure after the period of time that we called enslavement or slavery. After that period of time, the families uh, were drawn together for survival sake, and they were kind of excited about so-called being free. And but they were drawn together as a unit, and they kind of preserved that unit. So they had a time of strength where families were they had an opportunity to own land or to share crop if nothing else. But the families became pretty strong as a unit. But over
Hmm.
time, uh, because of circumstances, that started breaking down. So I'm thinking about my family last night. And so my grandson and son was there. I'm in the living room, grandson's upstairs in his room, and my son was kind of in and out, but he was in another room. But the women were all around the table playing this game. So I'm thinking about that. And I said, wow, how the family can be so what was the term you used? Fragmented, you know?
Yes.
Yeah, and how the there's been some underlying factors in the African American family that have fragmented us, and the sensitivities of the women had drawn them together around the table, but the men was more spread out
Yeah.
and was not a
Scattered.
yes, more scattered and not a part of that immediate sense of just this family sensitivity around the
Yeah.
table playing the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah. Yeah. The Quran describes it as being like scattered moths.
Yeah. And then I started thinking about two more of my daughters. One's on the West Coast and the other one's on the East Coast. One's in Los Angeles, the other one's in New York, you know.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the sensitivities in our people, by our people, I mean the African Americans,
Sure.
and because anybody is part of our people if they are thinking like us and moving
Yeah.
like,
They have our
want the same
sensitivities.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Ethnic identity don't have anything to do with that, really. But
Right.
but anyway, I'm thinking about the African American people and thinking about how we've been so fragmented like that in my particular family, you know, and the families, when the family is cohesive and one cohesive family connects with another cohesive family, now you got community.
Yes.
But it all starts with in the family, and within the family, it's the husband and the wife, the mother and the father, having that sense of cohesiveness,
Yes.
not only outwardly, but more importantly, inwardly, so that they have a sense of oneness, a sense of communication,
Yeah.
because they can be together. Like my wife and I've been together for 51 years, but we are just now realizing that the internal connection and the external connection is just now beginning to merge after 51 years.
Fortunate you are.
Yes, and I was thinking about that last night. I'm sitting there thinking about that, about how if we're not consciously building as creators right now, then our families, if we aren't doing that, we're going to miss the opportunity to really rebuild,
Yes.
recreate
Come
the
on.
family strength again. Going
That's right.
going back to Daad and Sod, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's
And all
right.
this was coming to me last night, man.
Hmm.
And how I saw this happen in the community life, and I
Yeah.
saw it now. I'm looking at it in terms of my own family and the opportunity that we have now going forward to for once to really get conscious control of rebuilding, reestablishing, going from Dodd back to sod again.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I just had to
Yes.
share that with you. I just had to
Oh,
share
I'm
that.
happy you did. I mean,
So
that's
timely,
wonderful.
man. Yeah.
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 It's just a wonderful thing when I think about how these letters impact the human life when you understand what they mean. Most of us are reading these words that contain these Arabic letters, but because we don't know what they mean, it doesn't hold as much significance for us. But when you understand what you and I have said thus far this evening, then we understand that the words, especially those that begin with these letters, are severely impacted by their meanings because their meanings are out of what we've been calling the fitrah, which
Hmm.
is Mother Nature. That's really what gives us a level of superiority, if I can use that word, a level of superiority in terms of the meanings that we derive from these words, especially those words that you find in the Quran. What gives us an air of superiority, if you will, and I use the word air on purpose, you know, uh, because everybody has to share air.
Mm, yes.
We don't all share money. We don't all share genes, genetics, but all living things, including the fish in the sea that we think are breathing water, they're actually breathing oxygen.
Mm,
So all living creatures have to breathe air. So air is really what evens us all out and makes us all essentially the same. So when you talk about these other letters, there are common values and principles that they have that they share. And building is something that every creature does, just as a rule. The birds are going to build nests, you know, even those animals that don't necessarily build their homes, they find a home that they can claim, like the bears, because they have to hibernate in the wintertime. But there are others who are out there building dams, the beavers, these people are building structures that accommodate their lives, especially if they are family creatures, mammals. So in these letters is actually the hints and clues,
mm,
what are called ayat, instructing signs
hmm.
for how we should be motivated and how we should be moving forward and what we should be avoiding.
Wow.
So if you see that something is responsible for your fragmentation, if you're a community person like we are, and we
Right.
see that the introduction of this red-blue dynamic, this gang life thing in most of our neighborhoods, we see that as it continues to grow in our community becomes more and more fragmented.
Hmm.
So that makes that event something that you need to work against
Right.
because fragmentation, as it also says in the Quran, is going to bring about your dilapidation, your weakness. Allah says in the Quran, do not be divided into what's called Shiite. That's not
Hmm.
the political Shiite. This is another word that means that. It means fragments. Do not be divided into sections, they call it. But look at how many sects we have in the world, not S-E-X, S-E-C-T-S. Look at how many of the sects we have in Islam.
Yes.
The Hanafi, the Maliki, the Sunni, the Shia, all of these different fragments. And it's the fragmentation that's keeping us weak
That's right.
and
Absolutely.
continues to keep us uninformed. So there's another word in the Quran that begins with Daad, and it's called a daraba. Now, this is an important word because it's the word that many Muslims use to justify the beating of their wives.
Wow.
Yeah,
You
the
know,
striking of their wives. See,
I,
they,
I was able
yeah,
to look up I was looking at the so-called definition of the word
yeah,
Daraba.
yeah, yeah. All right.
And I was taught, years ago that it just meant to hit, and that's
Yeah, to
man,
strike. Yeah,
it means so much more than that.
absolutely.
But just had to share
Yeah,
it, which I
yeah.
have such surface understanding
I'm
of
telling you, I'm telling you, I'm telling you. But
letters
it's
and
that action of hitting or striking that is causing the separation and the fragmentation
hmm,
because we're not understanding what that verse is attempting to tell us
yes.
because we have to analyze it letter for letter.
Yes.
That's the beauty in the study of the Quran. You have to analyze it, not just word for word, letter for letter.
Full letter. Yes.
So that word also means to swim.
Hmm.
It doesn't just mean to beat
Yes. Wow.
or to strike, but I would say to people who are English speaking people who don't speak Arabic, they don't understand the Arabic language. When you read these things in the Quran, if you're reading the Quran, and it says about the women to strike her, you should think about how many ways the word strike is used in the English language.
Hmm.
Even if you go to a baseball game, you're going to hear that word.
Hmm. Interesting. Yes.
Strike, you're out. You're going to hear that word. But it has
Right.
nothing to do with beating anybody upside the head with a baseball bat. But these people who don't understand sometimes their own language, they misconstrue what's being said and they think it's talking about beating up a woman because they disagreed with something the husband said or some foolishness like that. I'm telling you, if I had to claim to be a part of a religion that believes like that, I'd leave that religion
Yes. It would just
because
make
that thing right there is
Hmm.
making fools out of the people who believe that.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
So it has nothing to do with beating. It has to do with protesting. Right now, in English, the word protest means to strike.
Hmm.
That's what the strike means. I'm going on strike.
See it in
I'm
the label.
protesting. And why am I protesting? I'm protesting because there's a situation being created here that is fragmenting us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I need to do something that's going to bring us back into our wholeness.
Yeah.
You
Beautiful.
see? Yeah. You don't go on strike against your job to stay in the street with the protest sign for the rest of your time on the job. No, you
Right.
want the boss on top or the bosses on top to say, man, we gotta bring this thing to an end. You know,
Right.
the sanitation department is on strike and the city is smelling. You know, we gotta end this thing. So it's designed to bring people back to their wholeness.
Again, there's so much, in these letters, man. We can only scratch the surface.
Oh man,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I could spend the next hour just talking about the community I came from. You mentioned Harlem. I'm from Watts. Same story.
same difference, different side of the country.
That's right. But with that, we'll have to bring uh, this conversation to a not a close necessarily, but to a pause.
Yeah, a
And
temporary
for those of
pause.
you who want to join us in this journey, because it's a journey,
It is. It
Yeah,
is.
yes. You can go to our website, and that's genetics institute.org. You
Yes.
can join the class with us. You can read the books there. You can contribute yourself. I'm sure you have some ideas that's been stimulated in your thinking in this brief
Yeah,
conversation.
feel free. Email them to us or put them in the chat box beneath the video if you see the video. And we can continue this conversation. It's one of the most important conversations that we can have, and that is how language is constructed and what the words mean because of what the letters signify.
That's right. And the fact that words actually make people.
Oh, indeed. Don't get me started. All right, my friend.
So with that,
See you in the next one. Yeah.
indeed, indeed. So wish everyone peace.
Yes.